DCP Player free. Get it now from digital.net.au.
So we're here today to talk about Dolby Atmos and the importance and role that sound has not only in filmmaking but the experience that sound technology can bring to audiences around the world. We launched Dolby Atmos 2 years ago here at CinemaCon, and since then we're now at over 100 feature films have utilized the technology. Not just Hollywood, we've also had movies mixed in Bollywood, Europe and Asia, and on top of that we have over 150 exhibitor partners around the world, and we're now over 600 screens and climbing. So with that, I want to thank our panelists for their time coming in today and introduce everybody. To my immediate left is Craig Henighan. Craig is based out of Fox Studios. Craig is a re-recording mixer, and he's been in the industry for over 15 years now and has over 100 titles to credit. Some of Craig's movies have included The Black Swan, Chasing Mavericks, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and most recently Craig just completed Noah, which hits theaters this weekend in Dolby Atmos. And Craig was also one of the early adopters of using the technology with Chasing Mavericks. So I'd like to welcome Craig. Thank you. Next to Craig, we have David E. Fluhr. David is based out of Disney. In college, David majored in electronic music, composition, and recording. His professional career began as a tape librarian, a recordist and sound editor, and as a dialogue and music lead re-recording mixer. He has been honored with 9 Emmy Awards, 38 nominations, 5 Golden Reel Award-winning films, 2 CAS Awards, 7 nominations, including this year's CAS Feature Film Animation Award for the musical Frozen, which you won. Congratulations. And David is active in the sound community beyond his role as a mixer. As a former 2-time governor of the ATAS Sound Branch, he's a member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Sound Branch, and a CAS board member since 1986. David is currently a re-recording mixer based out of Disney and is also the president of the Cinema Audio Society. So thank you for your time, David.
Welcome. Used all your time up on that.
Next to David, we have Chris from Santikos. Chris is the director of marketing at Santikos Theaters. He's a 30-year veteran of film exhibition industry, having worked for Santikos, Marquee Cinemas, Cinemark, Fox Theaters, Cinema Draft House, and United Artists. He currently serves as the director of marketing at Santikos Theaters, serving the South Texas guests in the San Antonio and Houston markets. Santikos boasts one of the highest per-screen averages in the United States, and 4 of its 9 locations were grossing in the top 150 nationally. Chris is a self-proclaimed movie lifer whose first job was in a movie theater, and last job probably will be too. Passionate about delivering the best possible movie-going experience to his guests. So welcome, Chris. Next to Chris, at the end, we have Nikolas Smith. Nick joins us as the advertising and marketing manager for Kerasotes Theaters. Showmanship and film exhibition have seemingly always run through Nick's veins. He's dedicated roughly half of his life to our industry in various roles. After his first leading role in the Cinema Associates and his time spent with Regal Entertainment Group, Nikolas joined Kerasotes ShowPlace Theaters at a point when it was the 6th largest exhibitor in North America to better pursue his passion for exhibition. At Kerasotes, Nick played a leading role in the brand evolution and opening campaigns for the company's current locations. He's very excited to redefine the movie-going experience for their guests with the ShowPlace Icon brand and Icon X premium large format as Kerasotes begins to expand into new markets, building upon its over 100 years of movie-going excellence. So welcome. Thank you. So when we think about the movie-making process, we'll kind of start with Craig and David. As we bring movies and help them come to life for your filmmakers. So if we start with you, Craig, how would you actually describe the Atmos experience to someone that's actually never heard it?
Someone that's never heard it in terms of like regular movie going?
Yeah, so normally they go to a theater and they're hearing everything in maybe 5.1 and 7.1.
I usually start with how awesome actually it is in terms of it. an immersive experience, and the level of detail that you can kind of create as sound sort of artists is what David and I sort of like to sort of refer to ourselves as when we work with directors and filmmakers. It's our job to sort of make the world and create the world. And what I try to explain to people that don't really, think of sound the way we do, it's like it's sort of supposed to be transparent, but at the same time emotive and immersive and all these things. And Atmos sort of allows you to sort of take sound to a level of detail and quality and perception and all those sort of things that just allows films to sort of come to life in a level that has never been achieved before. I think over the last 10 or 15 years, there's been so much technology driven into picture side of things, quality of picture and 3D and all this stuff, and sound has always sort of been, the baby brother. But if you take sound away, then it's, your movie, there's no movie experience. So when Atmos sort of came along a couple of years ago, I was really one to sort of jump on it because I felt like it was, God damn it, it's our time. Sound is our time to sort of, not to be showy with what we do for a living, but Atmos sort of just allows you to sort of like bring theater goers into the experience on such a greater level. And sound is such a subjective thing. And when you're watching a movie, you don't want the sound, you don't want to be taken out of the film, you just want to be able to enjoy it.
Right.
And that's, I think, what Dolby Atmos sort of provides, is that ability to really engage an audience goer and make them feel like they're in an environment, if they're in the middle of a war or in the middle of, the ocean for Life of Pi, or Jason Maverick was surfing and stuff,
Stuart,
so it's that
Yeah.
kind of
because
stuff.
of the exhaust noise back here, it's very difficult to hear. You ask your panelists to speak up as best
Okay,
they can.
sure.
Sorry, I have a little
Volume
voice to begin
knob.
with. And as a sound guy, sound guy should probably
Projection.
know that. Sorry. But I mean, that's sort of the basics. So I mean, I kind of get quite animated when I talk about sound, and so I try to just sort of like, speak about it from a very sort of like way of it being just a greater experience and enjoying the movie going experience and getting people to come back to theaters and to enjoy the actual what cinema can actually provide you, and what storytelling and what movies can kind of do to excite you.
Right. So David, we obviously kind of explained the experience, but how would you, or can you convey what the difference is between a 5.1 channel system, which is predominant today, versus how Dolby Atmos works?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us here, and it's really a pleasure to talk to everybody here, because we're the front line, of innovation, and to me that's what Dolby Atmos really represents, because we've got 5.1, we went to 7.1, that was an advance. This is well beyond anything that's come before, I think, in terms of the exponential benefit to moviegoers and storytellers and film in general. So when we have 5.1, there's nothing wrong with 5.1. There's nothing wrong with 7.1. And as a matter of fact, those are both the foundations of Atmos in terms of what we call the bed of Atmos is still left, center, right, left wall, right wall, maybe left rear, right rear, and a subwoofer. That's 5.1 or 7.1. These are the arrays of speakers that we use to help mix dialogue, music, and effects and help tell the story. So everything we do, every dialogue line, every sound effect, every music cue, every placement, every pan, all has to have something to do with telling the story, or we're not doing our job. So once we start deviating from that and getting gimmicky, when 5.1 first came out and we had surrounds, stereo surrounds, everybody was using the surrounds, and it was movies were judged by how much was in the surrounds, and it's really kind of off track. But now it's settled down to the art and science of what we do, which is really the foundation of it. We are all sound artists, and we're not just technicians, So the idea of being able to pull something off the screen that we could never do before has an effect on an audience, whether they know it or not what's going on technically. It really doesn't matter. When never before could we do this. In other words, if we had a dialogue line and someone was going to walk around the room, in 5.1, you have your left, center, right, which is the same in Atmos, okay? We add a couple of extra inner speakers for quality, but we still have the ability to pan something across the screen. As soon as you get to the wall, that whole wall lights up with sound. So 5.1 is left, center, right, left wall, subwoofer. So in terms of being able to really pinpoint a sound, we're off on the wall. The whole wall lights up with that same sound. So it's an array. It's also frequency restricted, rolled off. You don't get as much high end or low end, and it's also lower in level. With Atmos, with 7.1 we kind of upped the game a little bit. We added in a sidewall and rear speakers so that we could get a little more definition, because it's all about image. We're thinking of in picture terms. We've got a light bulb that's dirty. We want to brighten it. We want to wipe the dirt off it so we can see the image more clearly. That's exactly what we're doing with sound frequencies. We're being able to pinpoint now sound. As soon as you pull something off the screen in Atmos, it is right there in that spot. It is right there in that spot. It is directly overhead here. It is in your lap over here. Could never do that before with 5.1 or 7.1. So when you think about the possibilities of the experience of mixing and telling a story, it's leaps and bounds above where we were. Just being able to play, and actually if you have an Atmos theater that's playing 3D or not, and you have an Atmos equipped room and you just play a 5.1 mix, that's a huge sonic upgrade right off the bat, because the surround speakers are now of higher quality. There's also a different frequency range on them, meaning that they treble and bass and the highs and the lows are going to be much more defined, much more powerful, so that clarity can be there that you could never hear before. So we're really experiencing something that an audience and filmmakers are loving, because now we can pull things off the screen. You could walk a voice all the way around the room and it would sound exactly the same, or a musical instrument all the way around the room or overhead, and there's no sonic difference. In 5.1 we have to work really hard to get that even just to work sonically, because there's a different speaker, there's a different roll-off, it's just sonically different. We make up for it in best ways we can, and it's worked for years, but now we've taken it to another level. So there's a whole laundry list of things that are improved, but to me it's the sonic integrity of everything is hugely improved.
Yeah, I mean, if we think about the movie-going experience, a lot of people don't really realize how much of a role sound is really playing. You're not obviously there to focus on sound or come away and go, oh, this is a really cool effect. But
no, we don't. What we don't want is gimmicky stuff. We don't want to. We don't want to play stuff really loud just because you can. It's the quiet stuff is where Atmos actually shines also really well. But these arrays that I mentioned, we have the option now to create those in Atmos. So if we want the whole wall to light up, we can program it. We can do it very easily. It's just like playing an instrument. You learn how to do it, and the whole wall can light up if that's the effect you want. But now we can pinpoint it down to this spot, or have something come right out of that corner if you want, or have it go from that corner all the way around us and grow right back. The kind of control that we have now. You can make a 5.1 mix in Atmos if you want to just duplicate the walls. But with 5.1 you can't do much else. So I love talking about this. I could talk about Atmos all day, obviously. But I'm just passionate about it from the standpoint. Sorry.
No.
We got stuff to do. But it is a monumental upgrade.
Thank you. So Craig, why is sound so important in storytelling? What is the role of, what is sound trying to convey to the audience when you watch a movie?
Yeah, where do you start with that one? Sound, there's the old cliche of sounds, half the experience. I'd actually sort of say it's more than half the experience. Just shutting off, your sound at home and watching images, how less interesting it is to sort of,
have
watch.
that, like, emotional
So
disconnect.
emotional disconnect. So, sound and storytelling with the way music can, the emotion that music can kind of bring to a scene, the realistic nature that sound effects can kind of bring to a scene, they all help filmmakers tell their stories better. Those tools, filmmakers are always looking for different tools to sort of be able to sort of convey what they want and what they're trying to kind of get out of their own hearts, basically, when they're recording or shooting a film. Film is dialogue driven. Every film, you have to hear every single line of dialogue. I mean, that's where you lose the most people, is if you're watching a film and you can't understand the dialogue, you kind of just check out.
Right.
Dolby Atmos allows you to sort of like open up, the soundscape is opened up so much you can sort of make things clearer and more believable, and the realistic nature of what Dolby Atmos can kind of do just allows those storytelling sort of elements to sort of come through on such a higher level. And I think that's probably the main thing with how sound can kind of, you know, tell stories. It's just that sort of relationship has just blossomed with what we can do when a director comes into a room and we say, oh, we can move this just a little bit off to the left or a little bit off to the right, not to take people out of it, but just to open it up a little bit.
Right.
Allows the filmmakers just go crazy. They just go, oh my God, this is great. And then you take something like Gravity, where Alfonso was just like, I want to be able to do all this stuff.
Right.
You know, I mean, because we've all been in theaters, I'm sure. You've all seen movies where you're like, what was that? What just happened behind me? And it kind of like, you know, with 7.1 and 5.1, it would actually take you out of watching the movie, where the believability of Atmos, because of everything David sort of explained, and the technology behind it, when you pan something off a dialogue line, or you know, a helicopter, a car by, or something, and it doesn't fall off the screen, it actually makes the experience be that much more believable. You believe that that person is behind you, or you believe someone's creeping up behind you, or whatever, because of the technology in the speaker system and the monitoring. That allows storytellers and filmmakers to sort of just take their game up, you know, tenfold. It's that sort of thing.
So we kind of talked.
May I add to it?
Sure, yeah.
You know, first and foremost, I'm a movie lover, as I suppose most people are. And Atmos is such a huge leap forward in sound technology that, you know, I've often made the metaphor that it's like it becomes a character in the film.
Right.
It's an unpaid member of the cast. I mean, Life of Pi in Atmos was probably the most remarkable film-going experience I've ever had, and it was really due to the sound.
Smartly used.
Yeah. So music also plays an integral part in motion picture soundtracks today.
Yes.
And Frozen, with its Oscar-winning song "Let It Go," you know, phenomenal music. How differently does Atmos deal with music?
Well,
What can you do with it?
you've never heard the song "Let It Go," probably, right? The thing that Atmos and Craig kind of touched on it is being able to get clarity. We no longer have to share all the same real estate. I call it sonic real estate. So everything's piled up in the center here. We just don't get the kind of clarity that we can get with music. And this is growing at such a fast pace right now. I was very fortunate that Disney allowed me several months of just woodshedding, as we used to call it in music school, just with Dolby Atmos in the room by myself, figuring out the workflows, going from 5.1 to Atmos back and forth again, making sure we can version everything out. And music is the thing, well, everything does have to deal with a fold down. But when you've got music spread around the room completely, you want to make sure that you're not doing anything that's going to hurt anything down the line. And it is remarkably well engineered to be able to allow you to pull the orchestra just off the screen and not have to be all bunched up here, and pull the main orchestra up. And if you have like in Frozen, we had a very kind of romantic choir, and it was appropriate to drape it over the top of the middle of the auditorium. We could never do those things before, because now, you know, it's appropriate to do that. This heavenly choir coming from above, right? So there it was. And lone horns kind of poking around, not the kind of distracting things, but the orchestra still had its continuity, its emotional content. And as soon as you start, I've seen experiments in Atmos where people are taking things and panning them all around the room, and it's because you can, it's kind of fun, but that's not what we do in the real world. We're wanting to make sure we maintain the integrity of the music. The composer has worked however hard. I mean, we all know how hard it is to do this. And the last thing you want to do, we're just like doctors, first do no harm. You know, we don't want to mess up what's come before. We just want to enhance it. And when Chris Beck came to the composer for Frozen and never heard Atmos before, most of my clients, you know, coming in for the first time hearing it are just literally, it's an amazing experience because they are completely immersed in the orchestra. And at times, though, we're making choices. As mixers, speaking of the emotional content, we're like conductors of an orchestra. We are making decisions all day long about what to do. Louder, softer, brighter, duller, around the room, not around the room, choices of takes and making dialogue cross choices and stuff. With music and with everything, we're like a little more of this, a little less of that, a little more of this, a little, and the mixing console is strictly a musical instrument that we learn how to play. So it looks all technical and crazy, and it is, but it's an instrument and it's a performance that comes across, especially in the music world and the sound design world, because they play together in the arena so much now, where sound design and music play together, and we have to coordinate these things in the mix. So it's a huge advancement, and in Frozen we were able to, in Let It Go, which I think we're going to hear a little bit of, we start out very simple. We don't need to be gimmicky, and it's a simple arrangement at the beginning. It's just a piano and her singing, a couple of strings every now and then. But as the thing builds, it comes off the screen, and before you get to the end of it, you're completely immersed in it, including her vocal who goes over the top of your head in the last song. I mean, these are kinds of creative decisions that we're making, and an audience might not have any idea really, but if you were to just play it flat on the screen and A-B it between the two versions, you'd go, oh, this feels a whole lot better, and it works for the music. So we have to be very careful that we maintain what the original intention of the music is. But as a matter of fact, there's a very famous scoring mixer. His name is Dennis Sands. He has built in his scoring stage, in his mixing stage that he mixes, and he's an Oscar winner, CAS Career Achievement winner. He's a major person, has designed and built an Atmos mixing stage for scoring. We're seeing this happening more and more around the world and around town now, because we're encouraging, and I'm encouraging, scoring mixers and composers to embrace the format, and they can even pre-mix before it gets to me in post-production. These things are all happening, and it's this groundswell of support that is, it can only make the craft better.
If I might add a little bit too to the music, just comments that we've received at our level from professional musicians, even some of my friends who've studied music for life and have been involved at various roles within the musical industry, have come back and said that, you know, after hearing something, the film score, they're looking around like, okay, where is the instrument? Because they believe it's there because it has so much clarity, and you can, I'm not much of a musician, so I can't really relate to this as well, but they say you can actually feel the emotional connection that whoever is behind that horn has, because it feels so
It's
real.
not competing with the same space. The one other thing quickly I want to mention is, because music is not just the orchestra, it's source music. And source music, what we call source music, something playing on a radio or a live band in the other room playing. It's, you know, on screen or on off screen, visual or non-visual source music that's playing to help the story. Just to give you an example, in Planes last year, we walked into this hangar, a huge hangar, and the planes are all in there, and they wanted the source music in there. So I put them up on the loft above over here. So there was a loft that was invisible to us, but it sounded like they were up above, hanging out, playing some jazz music up there. Could never do that before. I mean, just the creative choices are cool, you know. And you can do that with pinpoint source if you need a radio to come from a particular place, or it's got to follow a car by that now goes around the room. You can have that source go exactly with it, and it makes sense to you. You'll get spoiled. You won't want to go back.
That's great. So for Walter Mitty, it's not your typical effects-laden movie.
Correct.
So what was your thought process as to why you wanted to use Dolby Atmos, and how did you use the technology?
The thought process was basically kind of what David was touching on with the music. It's a very, very heavy music-oriented film, and Ben Stiller, a director, wanted to sort of like explore different ideas of what Atmos would be able to do musically to enhance emotion, getting back to the sort of storytelling idea of where his sort of thought process is at. So, we sort of went at it with, okay, you kind of start breaking it down and like, okay, this scene here, from a simplistic view, like, okay, this scene here could work really well in Atmos, and then this scene over here can work really well in Atmos. And then pretty soon you realize that everything in Atmos actually will work better, even if it's the simplest idea. In fact, I would sort of say, in my experience, the simpler the scenes, the more Atmos is actually beneficial.
Right.
Speaking to what the gentleman down here was saying about hearing the emotion of a music cue or a certain player in that orchestra, you can only really hear that stuff if stuff is quiet enough to be able to pick up on those sort of things. There's Walter Murch is a very famous sound designer and re-recording mixer and picture editor. He has this theory, or came up with a theory, that humans can really only hear, I think it's 3 things at once or something like that, Dave? So when you're watching
Smaller
something
than
that's
you think.
coming at you like crazy, you just can't process all that.
Disoriented.
You get disoriented, and then you throw in all the amazing visual effects movies can kind of do now, and you just sit there and you're like, what? It can be a really fun experience, but when you can get quiet and you can get into Life of Pi, for instance, has so many quiet scenes and so many subtleties. That's where, when we were working on Mitty, that's where I felt, okay, we can really use the sonic spectrum in that sort of fashion. So, we used it with music, and there's some big spots in Mitty, and we're able to sort of like use the lower extension of full range surrounds and all that kind of stuff. But it was driven from sort of storytelling of enhancing what we have versus blowing people away.
Right. So we kind of talked about the different things that you can do with Atmos. How many of you have actually seen Walter Mitty? Okay. Did you see it in Atmos?
I did.
Okay. Cool. So why don't you introduce the clip that you have, and then that way we can demonstrate how you used it in this particular sequence.
Okay, well, the clip I chose was basically a clip where one of our main characters starts on guitar, and it basically starts mono, starts in the one center speaker, and then as the scene progresses, the song basically slowly, it's a big centerpiece of the film, and basically sound and music basically blooms from one mono source and blooms out into the Atmos world, and then it kind of gets into a big sort of sequence. So I just basically, wanted to show off what what the range of this sort of technology can kind of get us. So hopefully you can kind of hear the difference between small and center speaker mono essentially, and then as it sort of blooms out to the front wall and then into the surrounds and into the Atmos world, into the overheads and stuff. So.
Okay, cool. So we'll go ahead and play a sequence from Walter Mitty for you.
This song, the reason why this sequence works so well is because it was written into the script. Ben has sort of developed this whole idea. So this song and the idea of the duet was really, on the page. And so often, David and I and people like us, sound is sort of an afterthought.
Right.
And it's sort of like, some people say, just put the sound on at the end and it's, we'll just finish it up. The best sounding movies and the best sounding sequences and stuff always sort of start on the written page. So the earlier you can kind of get involved with that kind of process, the better the end result is really going to be. So when I got involved with this with Ben, I was like, wouldn't it be great if we can kind of get the splits of Space Oddity of the David Bowie song? And by meaning splits, I mean the actual master recorded tracks. And it was really just a Hail Mary. Like, do you think we could get this? Because who's going to go ask David Bowie if we can license this song?
Right.
And then he's going to give us the masters to be able to essentially mess with it. Because that's kind of, we remixed it. So Skip Livesey, who was my dialogue and music mixer on this, had, I think it was maybe 8 tracks or whatever it was. But it was, the vocals were separate and the bass was separate and the drums were separate. So we had this flexibility to sort of like recreate what the intention of Major Tom was, but not divert too far away from it, because you obviously don't want to see David to come see the movie and the song is the ass backwards or whatever. So, but what it allowed us to do was to put Kristen's voice sort of in the middle and she sang it to a track and did it a couple extra times, and so we got it right.
Right.
And then the idea of where to kind of crossfade between her voice and into David's voice, you know, we took a lot of time and care just to sort of figure out where the right spot would be. Her playing guitar, we had to get the guitar to sound right in that room so it was believable, but then it had to blend into the rest of the song as well. So having the splits and having Atmos to sort of like take it to that extra level was just paramount with how you could kind of do something like that. So it was such an effective thing to go from a mono signal source and her just singing into this sort of thing. And not, you know, we didn't go, you know, to be honest with you, we didn't go crazy with the Atmos side of it, but because, you know, there's a fear of like becoming disconnected from the screen and disconnected from the movie if you push too much stuff further off.
Right.
Off. So you kind of want to use this sort of world, the overheads and these surrounds into the first view as sort of your sort of like room of operation. And then I took the helicopter, and it's sort of I was the sound designer and sound effects mixer on it, so I took the helicopter blades and put them a little further out into the room. And then when we got into the helicopter, the rumble and all that kind of the shaking and stuff like that was my job to sort of make us feel like we're all like in there with them and stuff.
Right.
So.
That was an excellent
Awesome.
sequence.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So let's talk about animation for a
Sure.
second. Do you take a different approach if we talk about Frozen?
Well, not really.
Mhm.
I mean, we're still telling the story, not to beat that one into the ground, but it is true that the main difference with animation is that we are dealing with things that are completely created from scratch. There is no production track, nothing recorded in the field that we have as a starting point. We have recorded dialogue, music, sound effect, everything is created by someone, and usually many people. There's hundreds of people involved, but by the time it gets to me, we've got a crew of people that have been designing things. I worked for about a year before we actually started the mix. I saw many sequences of Frozen, and that in animation, it's a 3 to 5 year process, and the movie was evolving over that period of time. So I was able to sit down early on and look at it and saw this sequence. There's many other sequences in the film that are action oriented, where you know there's things that are flying all around you, but you know the quiet things, as we've kind of touched on, also really help Atmos shine. And it kind of reminds me of a quote from Hitchcock, who said, "It's not the bang, it's the anticipation of it." And so with Atmos, you can play things subtly, and then when things finally do happen, it has more meaning. And as mixers, we're constantly actually taking things away, not just adding. We're subtracting. If we don't need a sound, it comes out. And with this sequence we're going to play, it's got a little bit of everything. It's got a traditional start where we're in the ballroom talking, and it's just conversation. It's just general ambience. We didn't need to be fancy with anything. And then as the tension grows, the music starts to come a little more off the screen. And I'm just kind of giving you some audio cues to listen for, because some of the stuff is subtle. But as we go outside, then the wind is a little bit more around us, the crowds, tension builds, and tension and release, tension and release. That's what the directors are doing, and we do the same thing with the sound if it helps to do that. And so we were able to put particular voice on the side, which draws people attention a certain way. And then as things progress and get more intense, we go across the fjord, and the whole fjord freezes. Appropriate to have it all the way around us, and some of the cracking and some intense sound. Dialogue popping at us from the rear. All these decisions were made long before we sat down on the mixing stage, or at least the general decisions. And with animation, we're able to do that, and we have so much control over everything. We don't have to worry about panning a dialogue line off, but it's taking all the city traffic with it,
Right.
from the production track, which is just another challenge that we deal with in live action. But we have a lot of creative control, and the clip kind of has all of that, plus the song, which I'm sure you've not heard before.
De vrieskou, daar zat ik toch al niet mee.
That was great. Thank you, David. So let's talk a little bit about the exhibition side and how Atmos plays with you guys. So Chris, let's talk a little bit about your premium large format strategy for Santikos and how Atmos has been part of that.
We adopted our first Atmos system, I guess, in October of 2012. We premiered it with Chasing Mavericks.
Cool.
And given our first taste of it, the wave action going over the top was pretty impressive.
Thank you.
I wish the movie had done better.
So do I. I wish more people had seen it.
But it sounded pretty awesome.
Cool.
We do have it kind of attached to our large format branded AVX system as a companion piece. We currently have 8 Dolby Atmos auditoriums, 6 at our new Houston location, which was new construction. So we were able to start from scratch and build in the Atmos system. But it's paired with 85-foot screens, 4K projection, and it's an impressive way to see the movie. What may be unique about our PLFs is that we don't use the P part. We don't monetize our large format screens, so there's no upcharge. It's our standard ticket price, as a way of just differentiating ourselves compared to competitors with their branded big screens. So it's a little unique, but it's worked out well for us.
Yeah, because predominantly most of the installations have typically obviously gone into a premium large format, and that has normally been part of the package of charging a premium. So that's an interesting take for you guys, a strategy of doing that.
And we've had questions. Why are we trying to monetize it to get the return on the initial investment? But kind of a part of our company core is to deliver the best possible experience. And in our view, we had really great confidence that this was the best choice for us. So rather than get another $4 per ticket or $5 per ticket, it's just, I've often compared it to, well, how many 3D screens do you have in your location? If you have more than one, then it adds to our capacity. We're probably the only theater in the country that could show 3 Men of Steel and 3 other Atmos films simultaneously, and we're not having that week one because you have so much content now.
Yeah.
It's not like it plays in Atmos a week and then it gets replaced. We're able to extend the run in Atmos and just provide that experience to many more.
That's excellent. Nick, for your customers in Kerasotes, have you had any feedback on what your customers think about Dolby Atmos in your theaters? Because you guys originally started in your Chicago location with a single Atmos screen, and then you actually added more into that existing complex.
Correct. We initially started with Brave. That was our. We were part of the initial rollout for Dolby Atmos, and we were very happy to be part of that. And starting in an auditorium, just a normal size auditorium, that was kind of a experience for us just to kind of see, what's going on, what are the customers thinking, and our customers were blown away by it. And we saw a lot of feedback of, anything from movies that were based off of books, like with The Hobbit. We heard people, this is exactly how I imagined it would sound when I was reading it and visualizing it as a book.
Right.
And just to hear that type of feedback that's what we're looking for. That's the core of the system, is to be able to engage the guests and get that type of feedback. For Chicago, we do have 3 screens total that are Dolby Atmos. One of them is our PLF, the Icon X, and our Minneapolis location also has an Icon X featuring the Dolby Atmos, and that's our continued growth pattern, is to make that the Dolby Atmos system a staple of our PLF as we grow as a company. We've always done our best to ensure that everybody gets the best possible experience, and from testimonials from repeat customers, me personally, I've been a huge advocate of it to everyone that I know, and some of the feedback that I've gotten, and we've even heard customers say this too, you'll have people that'll say, well, is this like 3D all over again, where, when 3D first rolled out, people were a little hesitant. Some people jumped on it right away.
Right.
There was the unease, and I think that's where we are now. It's like when 3D first hit, it was, well, what's the big deal about 3D? Get in there and see it and listen to people and what they're saying. That's the big deal about 3D. Now with Dolby Atmos, I can talk it up all day long and how much I love what it does for films and what it does for the experience, but I will drag someone in there kicking and screaming and make them sit through it to make them a believer if I have to, and I've done that and it works out well. So.
That's great. Have you been able to see any difference in attendance from having the technology, or any changing pattern in your customer base?
We have. We definitely have people that are regularly seeking out our Dolby Atmos showtimes. We have a broad base of individuals that, when we see just where people are coming from with our loyalty program, where inquiries are coming from, survey feedback, we see a lot of people are traveling not just like a few miles, but with Chicago, for example, we have people coming from Northwest Indiana, we have people coming from the suburbs, and it's been a true asset to have people traveling that far. Twin Cities, it's the same way. We have people coming from all over the Twin Cities region, specifically asking us, when is the Atmos showtime, when can I see it, and the building that brand recognition, not only for that, but just our other technologies too. It's been huge.
It's definitely something you can't get at home.
Exactly.
So that's a reason to fill seats.
And we have a similar experience. I mean, we were the first location to have Atmos in the Houston market. And guests were reporting to us that they were driving 40 and 60 miles from other parts of Houston to get to the
To come and
location.
check it out.
Which was ideal for a grand opening strategy. It set us apart. Our competitors quickly added in a few months later, but initially, we were kind of the premier, and it was a nice press point.
So the way exhibitors actually market themselves has changed dramatically. It used to be we would do, you do a print ad, letting people know what you're showing. Obviously, the advent of social media. How are you guys embracing that kind of technology, and how do you market the features of something like Dolby Atmos to your customer base?
Sure, I can take a swing first. We've got basically a multi-tiered platform of social media engagement that we've been utilizing. We've been all over Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Vine, anywhere that we can get out there to express the feedback that we've received, our enthusiasm. Dolby's been great providing us with assets that we can utilize to further educate everyone and to explain what the system is and explain why you need to see a particular film in Dolby Atmos to complete the experience. We also, just as part of getting the word out there too, the radio is still alive as far as that goes, so we've had some radio events. We've done with alternative press in our markets where we have the Dolby Atmos. Alternative press has been great as far as reaching the younger demographics and just getting engagement that way. Public transit, with call to action on public transit surrounding our locations, that's been essential too. Just it tends to generate just seeing this, like especially the red chair, and with a forest around it, or
Right.
the red chair with a jet landing over it. That drew a lot of attention, and a lot of people were like, what is this? We need to know. Drove them to our website, our social media, and everything, and it's been really great to embrace it and just get the interaction in general.
That's great.
And I'll agree that, we have since it's relatively new technology, a part of the burden is one of education.
Right.
To communicate why it's different. It's one thing for me to say it's 64.2 channels and X number of watts, but that doesn't translate to a guest. The guest perception when they hear new sound system is new loud sound system, and this is anything but that. It's counter. So the burden of education was played into all the early marketing. Certainly Dolby was great in coming out and doing video testimonials
Right.
that we continue to use to this day. brand ambassador coming down for each new launch that would, physically stand in the auditorium and explain the technology and what they're about to hear. Your educational piece, we still have that still on our website, and
I only got paid for that.
And it continues to be on our website as an educational piece, allowing us to explain to guests what is different, what is unique.
Right.
We are very careful that any film marketing that we produce is branded Atmos, whether we still do print, digital, radio, on our TV show. Any film that's released in Atmos gets branded as Atmos, just so guests can identify it.
So you bring up a point about brand. How important is a name like Dolby as a brand that you can use to your customers?
Certainly there's the history of the brand.
Uh-huh.
People have a trust with the brand. And there's a stature to it that when we attach ourselves to it, it makes us look good. And thank you for that.
Absolutely.
It's, I also have Barco RO 11.1. I also have IMAX and other things. The marketing maturity that Dolby puts out, the pieces, the education, the in-theater, everything really just contributes to just education, reinforcement, and it really helps. Kristen does a great job.
I definitely agree with that. We've been, as a company, we've had a very long-standing relationship with Dolby, and I hope I'm not misquoting this, but our COO last night, if I recall, was actually telling Kristen and I that I believe he said the first piece of Dolby equipment we installed might have been like 1963, I believe, or something. I could be horribly wrong, but
right.
Yeah, maybe 83. But beyond the dates, we've had a long-standing relationship, and it's something that people have come to associate us with. Is we have the standard. We take the standard and we raise it. We have the cutting-edge technology. And Dolby has always been there through us with that. Whenever something new comes out, our director of projection technology, Fred Walraven, he's right there doing the research on the front lines. And I really believe that I've got to agree with you. The content that Dolby has through marketing with every channel exposed, everything available. It's a complete package. It's completely adaptable, and that's made my job a lot easier. That's made everyone's job a lot easier in bringing the awareness of this new product. And people recognize Dolby as a gold standard, and it's to just further enrich that and to let people know that, hey, we've got the latest piece of Dolby technology here. That goes a long way.
I can speak from the studio side somewhat, and specifically at Disney embraced this very early. But all the studios, to my knowledge, have done installations on their mixing stages and their exhibition theaters on their lots, and have embraced the format and are actively engaged in. It needs a sound. It's just really encouraging to me that the creators are setting the table, and it's been a little frustrating for some of the filmmakers that there's not enough, or maybe we could use more venues out there that can display the stuff and really get it going. And I think that momentum is starting to build, hearing more and more every day about more theaters coming online, and it's very encouraging to us to hear this, and it's only going to help the creative side go, okay, my stuff's actually going to get seen and it's great, and so just keep going is what I'm saying. But the studio sides have all embraced it, so without that we can't do much.
And people are actively, even though the releases go out there and everything and the titles are out there and listed on the website, people are still coming back to us. Well, I have my list of movies that I would like to see in Atmos, or who do I talk to about having something mixed in Atmos? And it's like, it's a new technology, so give everybody some time to adapt to it. But I mean, it's that right there was a sign when people were coming back and holding conversations on our social media about, you know, if they could go back in time and remix some of their favorite movies into the Dolby Atmos sound format. You know, seeing that type of engagement, that right there tells me that these are going to be return customers, that we're getting their butts in the seats, and these are going to be our brand advocates, not only for us, but for the technology.
I can tell you that I see that on the horizon with the libraries that these studios own, you know, to remaster things, and we now have the workflow in place to be able to do it efficiently, cost effectively, and smartly, so that we can up-res into Atmos titles that could really use the presentation. The list would be huge.
This reminds me of, I think it was Jeffrey Katzenberg 7 years ago, standing on the stage at Show West and pleading for 3D installations just because we have all this content coming and nowhere to show it.
Right.
So, you know, I'm in a fortunate situation with the number of Atmos houses I have, but for locations where there's maybe just one,
Right.
you know, there's so much content coming out that it's almost
Yeah, I mean, as is with any new technology, there's always we put one in, we try it out, and then
Right.
we do a play down or we expand it. So I think, you know, if the both of you have now put multiple in, you see that continuing to further as you expand in your businesses and seeing the return of investment for putting in the technology.
Well, as you said, the competition saw that and immediately started.
No, it's
Doing
inside
the
of
same.
6 months after our installation, we had multiple competitors at Atmos houses. And it was counter to other markets where they did not. So it seemed to me it was a direct response.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And one of the other great things too about having multiple screens in one location that we've seen, and I'm sure you've seen it too, when you have more than one Atmos title available, with us in our situation, on a new title, we can have it in our Icon X and have it available there. And if there's a title that's been hanging on, by having the other auditoriums and the smaller auditoriums, we can still keep multiple titles on screen, and that's giving our guests time to be able to experience it and repeat business as well for everyone that wants to come back and bring their friends and experience it again. So definitely having multiple locations has worked to our advantage.
So our industry is kind of small. We're in a very unique industry where even though we're competitors, it's a family. We all talk to each other, we all communicate. We all have friends that have other theater chains. If another theater chain, not necessarily in a competitive zone, friend came to you and said, hey, you've got Atmos, what would you say to them is the biggest benefit of having it?
Do you want to take this one first?
The biggest benefit is, you know, most exhibitors claim to try to put forth the best presentation possible. I think this gives that some credence. Not only are you saying it, but you are supporting it. To me, it was such a huge leap forward sound-wise from where things were to where they are. I mean, I remember when SR came in, and I was like, wow.
Right.
Rattling hum, first time. I was like, oh my God. It's such a huge leap forward, and the delivery of quality, incredible sound to a guest, to make them fall in love with the movies again, I think is probably the biggest benefit.
And it's not just special. This kind of thing maybe has existed in special venues before, like in amusement parks, and where you can do anything you want in one room.
Yes.
This makes it now the same exact mix that we mixed on the dub stage you heard today here. And it's self-maintaining. I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into this too that makes it really smart for a theater owner to have its own self-maintaining, setup, and it can take care of itself to a certain extent, and it's very accurate. And it's our room we mixed in is 4 or 5 times the size of this room, but the technology is there to translate it down to any size room that you want. I mean, it's been thought about by Dolby that, okay, you only have this many speakers, then it will play this way, and it will play correctly in a room that's smaller or bigger. It's very smart for that, getting it into the different venues.
And I'd have to say too, along the lines of, friend or competitor coming in asking about the system, first thing that I would offer to do is, I'd ask them directly, well, have you experienced it yet? And if they haven't, allow them to experience that, because the sound does the talking. Just the
I'll remember that.
Yeah.
That's good for the dubs.
Yeah, there we go. But I would definitely, tell someone to, if they're looking for the ultimate experience that they're trying to create, even if it's just, if they're a small chain, large chain, if they're doing a premium format, if they just want to have better sound in their auditoriums, I mean, the scalability of the system, and just with the catalog ever increasing, it's worth it. It makes what's already with 3D a multisensory experience. It makes it that much more of an immersive experience, and it builds upon bringing what's on the screen to a reality and taking you away for that moment.
Speaking of 3D, I worked on a lot of the concert films that were out there, and the first 3D concert film was the Hannah Montana concert film, or one of the first, and Justin Bieber and all those did that. And but we were in 5.1, and we couldn't bring things off the screen. They were doing some visual effects, and we did some tricks to try to do that. Most 3D or a lot of 3D is proscenium. Behind the proscenium, it goes that way, which is depth this way. And people were doing a lot of gimmicky things, bringing them off the screen early on, and that's kind of tempered down. But as a quick example, in Oz the Great and Powerful, which is another film that we did last year, we were able to take, because we watched it in 3D on the dub stage, and there's one scene where they're going into the witch's forest, and this creature comes off the screen, I mean literally into the middle of the theater and back with his face scaring the heck out of everybody. We were able to bring the sound right there with them off the screen. It could never do that before. So 3D or not, it's amazing, but when you can enhance the visuals or go with the visuals and have it actually be visceral, it's pretty amazing. And so bringing up the concert films, because that's a huge area of where Atmos really plays in when you're immersed in the audience.
Kind of feeling like
you're there at the stadium or at the concert venue. It's an incredible experience.
Well, I'd like to thank our panelists for giving us their time today. Nick, Chris, David, Craig, thank you so much. We can't thank Santikos and Kerasotes enough for the amazing partnership that we've had with you guys over the years, and supporting all the efforts and technologies that we bring to market. David, Craig, we love you
Pleasure.
guys.
Thank you for having us.
We have a great relationship with Disney and Fox, and we can't thank you enough for doing all the hard work and making these movies sound so great. So thank you.
We love the chance.